South Africa is in turmoil after an explosive event in parliament that has shaken the nation to its core. What was supposed to be a routine debate turned into one of the most dramatic political showdowns in recent memory. The National Assembly, known for its fiery exchanges and grandstanding, became the epicenter of a political earthquake when an opposition MP named Mani stood up and did the unthinkable. He called for the immediate arrest of President Cyril Ramaphosa, right there on the parliamentary floor, live on national television. The moment his words echoed through the chamber, chaos erupted. Some members of parliament erupted in cheers, fists raised in the air, chanting "Justice! Justice!" while others shouted in outrage, calling Mani's move disgraceful and dangerous. The speaker's gavel pounded repeatedly, but her voice was lost in the roar of shouts and accusations. Security officials stood at the ready, anticipating that words might soon give way to fists. What unfolded wasn't just a moment of political theater, it was a defining flashpoint that revealed how fragile South Africa's democracy has become. To understand why this happened, one must look at the bigger picture. South Africa in 2025 is a nation on the edge. The economy is stumbling, unemployment hovers around 33%, and for young people under 25, the figure is closer to a staggering 60%. Load shedding continues to cripple businesses and households despite countless government promises of an end to the crisis. The inequality remains among the worst in the world, with a Gini coefficient of 0.63, a stark measure of the divide between the rich and the poor. And corruption, always a shadow over South African politics, still refuses to fade. The Failure scandal, in which Ramaphosa was accused of hiding undeclared cash on his farm, continues to haunt him. Added to that, the Nhlanhla Commission, a corruption probe that the president himself established in July 2025, has become a political ticking time bomb for his own administration. Explosive testimony, like that of National Police Commissioner Fanny Masemola, who claimed he warned Ramaphosa about disbanded anti-crime units and was ignored, has painted the president as either complicit or clueless. In this climate of anger and disillusionment, Mani's outburst wasn't random. It was a spark in a powder keg. When Ramaphosa came into power in 2018, he promised a new dawn, a clean break from the scandal-ridden years of Jacob Zuma. But for many citizens, that promise never materialized. Instead, they see a government mired in secrecy, compromise, and self-preservation while millions remain trapped in poverty. The Nhlanhla Commission has only deepened this perception, exposing corruption within law enforcement and among ministers. Police Minister Senzo Mchunya's suspension in July, after being accused of protecting criminal syndicates, added more fuel to public outrage. Social media is ablaze with clips of Masemola's testimony, especially after influencer Toko Machila's viral post gained over 17,000 engagements. Hashtags like #ArrestRamaphosa and #ParliamentChaos have trended for days, echoing in taxi ranks, on university campuses, and across talk radio stations. Mani's fiery demand didn't just resonate in the parliamentary chamber, it reverberated throughout the nation. During his speech, Mani accused Ramaphosa of betraying South Africans, hiding behind power and privilege while citizens suffered. He's betrayed the trust of the people and taken cover behind the privileges of power while we struggle, he thundered. His declaration hit like a grenade. Opposition benches erupted in cheers and chants as if they were at a rally rather than a legislative session. The ruling ANC benches retaliated, shouting insults and accusing Mani of endangering democracy. Some MPs demanded that he be removed from the chamber, while one ANC member wagged a finger and called his words disgraceful. The speaker's desperate attempts to restore order went unheard as the uproar reached fever pitch. This confrontation wasn't merely about one man attacking another, it symbolized two competing visions for South Africa's future. On one side stood the opposition, channeling the frustrations of a populace weary of corruption and economic stagnation. Figures like the EFF's Julius Malema and Patriotic Alliance leader Gayton McKenzie have built their platforms on the same anger, portraying Ramaphosa as the face of a decaying ANC clinging to power. Social media posts from Nhlanhla and Mkhwanazi have fanned the flames, with Mkhwanazi even falsely claiming an international arrest warrant existed for Ramaphosa, a claim that went viral. Their message is clear: the ANC has failed the people, and it's time for change. On the other side, the ANC and its allies insist that Ramaphosa is working to stabilize the country, steering through difficult economic and political storms. They argue that Mkhwanazi's actions were reckless theatrics designed for viral outrage, not responsible governance. Ramaphosa supporters point to his September 9 speech outlining a plan to channel our 49.3 trillion in pension funds into infrastructure investment as evidence of concrete action. But optics matter more than plans, and the sight of an MP demanding the president's arrest amid parliamentary chaos has done serious damage to his authority. Behind the scenes, Ramaphosa's advisors are scrambling to contain the fallout. Reports suggest they are urging him to project strength and dismiss Mkhwanazi's move as a desperate political stunt. But even loyal ANC insiders privately admit that this episode has hurt the president's image. The question many are now asking is whether Ramaphosa still controls his party, let alone the country. His coalition with the Democratic Alliance, formed after the 2024 elections, is already on shaky ground. In June, the DA publicly rebelled after Ramaphosa fired a deputy minister while shielding ANC members accused of corruption. With the Nhlanhla Commission continuing to uncover scandal after scandal, cracks within the coalition are widening. Analysts are already speculating about an internal leadership challenge in 2027, or even calls for Ramaphosa to step down earlier. Online, the political explosion has taken on a life of its own. Within minutes of Mkhwanazi's speech, #ArrestRamaphosa and #MkhwanaziFirestorm were trending across X. Political influencers and commentators joined the fray, with some calling Mkhwanazi a hero who spoke truth to power, while others accused him of undermining democratic institutions. The debate has spread beyond digital spaces. In Johannesburg's taxi ranks, commuters argue over whether Ramaphosa has failed the nation. In Cape Town universities, students are dissecting the meaning of accountability and justice. In rural towns, callers flood radio shows, some praising Mkhwanazi for saying what ordinary citizens have long felt, that Ramaphosa is not untouchable. The question now is whether this was mere political theater or a sign of something deeper. Critics of Mkhwanazi's move argue that his demand for an arrest was pure grandstanding, an attempt to grab headlines, rally supporters, and dominate social media feeds. They point out that Parliament has no authority to order an arrest without due legal process, making his demand more symbolic than practical. Opposition figures like Nhlanhla and Mkhwanazi have perfected this kind of spectacle, using outrage as a political weapon. It's loud, dramatic, and effective at drawing attention. But there's a risk. If Mkhwanazi's theatrics are seen as reckless or destabilizing, they could backfire, painting the opposition as dangerous populists. The ANC has already begun framing the moment this way, suggesting Ramaphosa is being unfairly vilified for trying to clean up a corrupt system he inherited. Yet there's no denying that Mkhwanazi's words tapped into something real, a deep and growing anger across South Africa. For millions struggling under unemployment, inflation, and corruption, his cry for accountability resonates. The Nhlanhla Commission has peeled back layers of rot that ordinary citizens find infuriating: police shielding criminals, ministers ignoring warnings, and a president seemingly out of touch. When Mkhwanazi said, "Ramaphosa has betrayed the people," it struck a chord. The statistics themselves tell a story of disillusionment: 60% youth unemployment, 33% overall joblessness, and a cost of living crisis crushing families. The ANC's support, which once seemed unshakable, has dipped below 40% in recent polls, the lowest since the end of apartheid. If Mkhwanazi's call turns into a wider movement, South Africa could see a wave of protests reminiscent of the EFF-led shutdowns of 2023. Radio callers and social media users are already expressing a sentiment of "enough is enough." In this volatile climate, even a small spark can ignite widespread unrest. The implications for the presidency are immense. Many's demand wasn't just a critique of Ramaphosa as a man, it was a challenge to the institution of the presidency itself. If the notion of arresting a sitting president takes root, it could shake the foundations of the ANC, already fractured by internal rivalries. With the DA coalition strained and opposition parties sensing vulnerability, Ramaphosa's political future looks increasingly uncertain. Internationally, this chaos couldn't come at a worse time. South Africa's global image has taken repeated hits. Earlier in 2025, former US President Donald Trump criticized the "kill the board" chants, and now, scenes of parliamentary disorder only reinforce perceptions of instability. Foreign investors, already nervous after a 20% drop in direct investment this year, may think twice before committing further funds. Ramaphosa's upcoming speech at the United Nations on September 23, intended to showcase South Africa as a leader in global cooperation, risks being overshadowed by images of his own parliament in disarray. Comparisons to Jacob Zuma's downfall are inevitable. Zuma's fall was a slow, drawn-out process, eroded by years of scandals, protests, and court battles. Ramaphosa's crisis, however, feels faster, fiercer, and amplified by the power of social media. Many's outburst, whether calculated or impulsive, may be the spark that accelerates that decline. While it's unlikely that Ramaphosa will face arrest without clear evidence from the Nhlanhla Commission, the idea itself, that even the president is not above the law, has now taken hold in the public imagination. That perception, once seeded, is difficult to reverse. Looking ahead, there are several possible paths for South Africa. One is that this moment ignites a wave of protests and political upheaval, especially if the Nhlanhla Commission's final report, expected later in 2025, directly implicates Ramaphosa. Such a scenario could trigger calls for early elections by 2026. Another possibility is that Ramaphosa weathers the storm. He has proven himself a political survivor before, particularly after the Fela scandal, when he managed to stabilize his government through alliances and compromise. If he can deliver tangible progress on economic reform and infrastructure investment, he might regain control. The third path is the political backfire scenario. If many's theatrics are perceived as too extreme, moderate voters might rally behind Ramaphosa, allowing him to portray himself as a victim of populist attacks. Ultimately, South Africa stands at a crossroads. Many's outburst in parliament has shattered the limits of political discourse and forced a national reckoning about leadership, accountability, and democracy itself. Whether he is remembered as a hero of the people or a reckless opportunist will depend on what happens next. For now, one thing is certain, the conversation he started is not going away. South Africans are debating, arguing, and reflecting on who truly holds power, and whether that power serves the people or merely preserves the elite. The next few weeks will determine whether this was just another viral political spectacle or the beginning of a seismic shift in South Africa's political landscape. Whatever the outcome, one thing is clear, the country is bracing for a storm, and its democracy is being tested like never before.